And welcome back, everyone, to the Resurrección series. It's the off month, so that means we switched from Zanpakuto to Resurrección. As you saw earlier in the week, Digimon and Lantern Corps. So here we are. This one comes from my personal list. Ensabanur, Apocalypse's Resurrección. Apocalypse is one of those guys whose list of powers is so great and so vast that it's really kind of hard to really isolate what his ability as either a Zanpakuto or a Resurrection would look like. Particularly as a Resurrection, because unlike with Zanpakuto, where I'm not necessarily converting their powers into a Zanpakuto, I'm trying to figure out what a Zanpakuto would look like based on who they are as an individual, because that's what a Zanpakuto for a Shinigami is, a reflection of who you are. Resurrection, however, is literally just the Hollow's power sealed into a sword, and on its release, it's released. So, if we're looking at Apocalypse in the form of a Hollow, by the way, if I'm ranking him as an Espada, he's easily Espada number 1 or 0. Like, Apocalypse is one of those guys. No weaker than number 2. Like, he could also be like a Baragon type, who's just been usurped by someone who's just slightly stronger than him. But if I were to look at him from the standpoint of a Hollow, hey, what does his original Hollow form look like? Because we try to make it look like either something akin to what they looked like prior. Hence why when I did Shin Godzilla, his Hollow form looked like mostly like Shin Godzilla. And I actually had to do the reverse, try to convert him into a Ronkar. Here, though, because he's so humanoid, it's one of those things where I think his original Hollow looks something a little bit more extravagant than what you see here. By the way, side note, I love the fact that it looks like he's standing on the table in this image. It's like, look at me, Espada. But, yeah, something a little bit more extravagant than this. Like, for example, his mask, perhaps, most Vasto Lourdes level Hollows that we saw didn't have mouths. I mean, we saw Haribel. She didn't have a mouth. We saw Lukiora. He didn't have a mouth. Baragon's the only one we saw who did have a mouth. So maybe it's just between different Hollows. But I could see it being that if we expand the image here of Apocalypse, give a good look at his face. You'll know, one of the trademarks of Apocalypse are those big blue lips that go straight to his ears. I think that's kind of what his mask is going to kind of take the form of, and therefore we can kind of reverse engineer that to what his original Hollow face looked like. I think it not only was it his mask, it was also his lips, but his mouth didn't open. I think it's like it went up and down like frowny face, smiley face whenever he was happy or sad. And I think those pointed lines on his face maybe went through his eyes and to his lips. So I think that's maybe what his original face looked like. He also probably didn't look anywhere near this mechanical. Like convert all this into like white shell armor, like most Hollow kind of look. And you get something more akin to what this look was. But he probably didn't have the tubes in his back. I'll say that. He probably didn't have the tubes. And there might be a little less detail. He also probably didn't have the A on his back initially. So again, that's his original Hollow form. That's his mask. What about his release and what does he actually do? Now, as a release for it being named Ensabanur or Apocalypse, I think it has to be Extinction. It's the name of the Zanpakuto. The name of his Resurrection is Extinction or Extinction. The release command is maybe either lay waste or weed out the weak, something like that. Actually, weed out the weak probably makes more sense for his standard Shinigami Zanpakuto, because most Ronkar Zanpakuto releases don't have more than a few phrases to them. At most, they're like maybe 2 words. Like Kickabout is the most wordy release I think we ever got. So I could see it being not even balance the scales, just I don't know. Lay waste is fine. Or Cull. Cull's a good one. I think I've used Cull before, but Cull is a good one. We know these things can repeat too. So what does the Resurrection now look like? Okay, well, to go back to this, I think it looks a lot like this, except now instead of having the mask and the lips not move or have a mouth, now he looks more like his comic counterpart, just accents of silver, white, and probably some blue in there. But now he does have the tubes and the A's on there. So essentially, convert this again into a less hollowified version of what we described with this hollow. So, and I mean, I could honestly color grade this probably into, what I'm kind of envisioning here. But that brings us now to the main question. What does this Resurrection actually do? I've already done adaptability with Shin Godzilla, and becoming immune to what came before. I don't want to quite do that again. But to be fair, that's not actually what Apocalypse's abilities are. The armor isn't even his ability. That's celestial tech. He's also got a celestial seed, if I'm not mistaken, inside of his body. So, all this armor, it's actually wasn't his. So you can make an argument that the reason he became, if we're going into a backstory real quick, and maybe that's something I should add to these, is a backstory for how they became what they are, is that he wasn't initially a Vastalorde. Maybe he was a Juice... I can never pronounce it right, but Ajukas, the stage before Vastalorde, who was on the verge of being a Vastalorde, and came across a felled Vastalorde who wasn't dead yet, but because he was power hungry, survival of the fittest, all that, he took his power, absorbed it, and literally kind of merged into him. So that's how he became a Vastalorde, and then he kind of started wreaking havoc. He was maybe a rival to Bargon and Ikidoke, I can never pronounce that one either. The other one from Cape Fear World. If I saw the name, maybe I could pronounce it right. So maybe that's the case. But again, so that's why he has maybe the extra armor, all that, the amp to his power. But what's his actual power? Well, in Marvel Comics, his actual power is really just complete control over his molecular structure, which allows him to increase the density of his skin, his strength. It allows him to shapeshift. It gives him an extended lifespan apart from the Celestials. And when you combine it with Celestial tech, it's why he can turn his arms and things like cannons. He's a genius. He can manipulate DNA. He can do all these things. So, his original hollow ability probably was, again, manipulating his own physical structure, shape-shifting his body into things, increasing his density, increasing the weight of his hits, or making himself lighter so he can move faster. It was probably a bunch of that. When he took the unknown Vastalorde's power into him, he probably gained extra abilities, like forming what would be, in this case, Sero or Reishi cannons, creating a Reishi blade. He can most likely, and if he has to, he can maybe try to rob the power of other hollows or Espada to add to his own strength. That, I think, would be in line for a character like Apocalypse, who is very much a proponent of survival is the fittest, or survival of the fittest. Only the strong survive, and you cull the weak for the strong. And that's probably what I said. He's culled the weak, taken the things he felt would help make him stronger, and there you are. Which would make him a deadly force in the Bleach world. I mean, yes, in terms of scaling Apocalypse, here's the thing. Apocalypse, as powerful as Apocalypse is, he is not a universal level threat, whereas the highest tier level Bleach characters are. So he wouldn't be like a Soul King, Yuapa, Aizen, or Ichigo level threat. I would argue he's definitely not an Ichibei threat either, because Ichibe's ability is axed as hell. But if you were to scale him down, he would definitely be someone who would be a threat to the 13 Court God Squad. This would be your end. He would be a threat to a pre-Hogyoku Aizen. Definitely. Even with Kyoka Suigetsu, he would still be an immense threat. Stealing power, adding it to his own. If anything, Aizen would look at him and go, interesting. He's doing something similar to what I'm trying to do. He's only sticking with hollows for now, but he could become a serious threat. I'll have to keep him in line. So yeah, I mean, hypothetically, it's a ability kind of similar to Espada number 9, where he eats hollows and then kind of has the abilities of the hollow, but it's without the limitation of what Gluttonaria actually looks like and how it limits him, as well as all of his power just is kind of there at his disposal. It's just stacking not just the ability, but the physical strength, durability, speed, Reishi. This would be an insane kind of Resurrection. Now, what would it look like as a Zanpakuto? Well, that's a different video entirely for a different time. But until then, that's my thoughts. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys for the next one. Later.